Well, it's another move to me from Howie to basically say to the fan base and to the team, hey, when you look at our schedule, when you look at what our roster looks like now, we can win now.
Mhm.
We're built, we're putting, even though Bradbury and Tartt are on 1-year contracts, we can win now. But this guy was a second round pick of the 49ers. And as you just said, he was a big hitter. He can hit, he's a physical player. But when the 49ers give up on you, I mean, I know he's 30 years old now, I believe, close to 30.
Yeah.
But when the 49ers give up on you and nobody else is grabbing at you to get you right away, the question to me is why? What are teams seeing or not seeing from him at this stage that maybe a fan who is excited about him coming in here, stabilizing that position, are so gung-ho about him on? Obviously, there was a reason that there wasn't a Congo line lined up to grab him.
Well, yeah, no, you're right. And we didn't really get a chance to dive into this one, Derek, but they make another move in the secondary to the Jaquisky Tartt, who has spent his entire career with the 49ers, actually played his college ball with James Bradbury at Samford, not Stanford, Samford. He comes over here. You know, I think a lot of people probably remember he had the giant interception drop, which was could have changed the entire complexity of that game against the Rams for the 49ers. But he was out there in free agency. Nobody grabbed him up. Niners didn't bring him back. Eagles bring him in. He's a bigger dude. He's 6'1". He'll hit you. I mean, he's a physical safety, more of a strong safety. What's your sense of this signing, and does this guy step right in and start if all things are equal?
Well, it's another move to me from Howie to basically say to the fan base and to the team, hey, when you look at our schedule, when you look at what our roster looks like now, we can win now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're built, we're putting, even though Bradbury and Tartt are on 1-year contracts, we can win now. But this guy was a second round pick of the 49ers. And as you just said, he was a big hitter. He can hit, he's a physical player. But when the 49ers give up on you, I mean, I know he's 30 years old now, I believe, close to 30.
Yeah.
But when the 49ers give up on you and nobody else is grabbing at you to get you right away, the question to me is why? What are teams seeing or not seeing from him at this stage that maybe a fan who is excited about him coming in here and stabilizing that position are so gung-ho about him on? Obviously, there was a reason that there wasn't a Congo line lined up to grab him. And the Eagles basically got him at a bargain basement price. It's not a given that he's going to start for this team, okay? I'll say that. I'll go on record saying that. It's not a given. Marcus Epps, depending on what he shows, could still very well be your starter at that position on the back end of the defense. But he does have a veteran presence. He played with a very good defense and a very good system. So, again, here's a culture thing. He can come in here, show these younger players how to elevate your game, how to handle yourself as a player, maybe even how to get a little bit more physical if they're lacking in that regard. So there is some value bringing him in here, not just as a player, but as a mentor and a culture guy to younger players in that locker room.
Yeah, I'm with you. I view it as you clearly didn't spend a lot on him. It couldn't hurt. But it also is telling that his own team didn't want him back. Other teams have safety needs just like the Eagles do, and he's been sitting for a while. So, you know, look, you get anything out of him, to me, it's a bonus. And it's already a position that you were really light, so it can't hurt, is the way I view it. I wouldn't, if I'm an Eagles fan, think he's going to step in there and be this difference maker. That's not what he's going to be here.
And look at his injury history as well. I mean, last year I think he played 15 games, but prior to that, 8 games, 9 games, 7 games. You know,
his physicality gets to him sometimes.
It does. You know, that could work against you in a lot of ways as well. But if you can get him on the field, and you got 2 proven cornerbacks, and you get this guy to play at the level that he played at a few years ago, and you got a proven safety, I think that answers a lot of questions about the deficiency we've been talking about since March at that safety spot and in the secondary in general.
All right, so here's the question I have for you. Okay, so they make that addition at safety. We've seen, Bradbury at the corner spot. We've seen A.J. Brown. We've seen Hassan Reddick. We've seen Kaiser White. We've seen what they've done in the draft. If you take a step back and do an overview, Derek, of each of the positions that needed help, and a good amount needed help, Which position do you think they've improved themselves most upon this offseason?
Well, I want to say it right now. Wide receiver would be the obvious choice, but I'm going to say linebacker. I don't think we've been this excited about the linebacking group in quite some time. You go out and get a guy who had 23 and a half sacks the last couple of years, and I know he's a hybrid. Mm-hmm. He can put his hand in the dirt. He can stand up and play the outside as well. But I think, he's going to help the linebacking situation out a lot. Then they draft Nakobe Dean. Then they bring in Kazir White. T.J. Edwards had a good year last year. So I think they have a quartet of really good linebackers. And that's going to help stabilize that front seven. And I think you have some interchangeable parts of that linebacking spot. You can move them around. Just because it says on paper that they play middle or weak side doesn't necessarily mean they have to play that from start to finish. I think if Jonathan Gann is smart, once he learns the physical attributes of each one of those guys I just mentioned, that there are situations in every game you can move these guys around and try to find a matchup that's to your favor. So I wasn't going to say cornerback, not cornerback. I wasn't going to say secondary, but the more I thought about it, the more it came to me. I said, you know what? I think linebacking to me, it has been a huge improvement compared to what they were.
I can't look. I'll get to mine in a second, but I can't argue your point. I mean, because on top of it, Derek, it's been such a point of weakness for this team for so long, and they've always downplayed it. And I get it; they don't think it's as critical, and it certainly wasn't in Schwartz's defense. But it was interesting last year at the end of the season. Both Howie and Jonathan Gann, when they were asked about the linebacker, somebody sort of posed a question, kind of like, "Look, we know you don't put that much of an emphasis," and they were both kind of like, "Depends on the scheme," which told me. I think Gannon went to them and said, "Guys, we have to upgrade this. Like, I need more here." Yeah. And I think that was kind of telling. I'm going to go defensive line, and I'm going to borrow a guy that you used here. This is where you can kind of steal him for either side, but I'm going to throw Reddick on the defensive line here.
Sure, sure.
You get Reddick in there with 23 and a half sacks the last 2 years. You get Jordan Davis, who some people think is the steal of the draft, depending on how you view this thing. And I just think the domino effect of getting Brandon Graham back coupled with Reddick, coupled with the Jordan Davis addition. We talked to Vinny Curry a little bit earlier, and this is what kind of tipped me to this side of this about being able to throw like a million different guys in a rotation at you and the fastballs that you can keep tossing. Mm-hmm. That to me is such a game changer. I think Fletcher's going to be better because of it. I think Hargrave's going to be better because of it. And they're both motivated because they're essentially in 1-year deals. I think, Milton Williams being an option at the defensive tackle, Jordan Davis, interior studs. On the outside, you add Reddick, you get Brandon Graham back. You have Barnett there at a much more reasonable deal. And then you have Sweat, who's coming off an injury at the end of the season. I think that's a good defensive line, man. And I think they have the capability of being much more effective getting to the quarterback, both inside and outside, which is going to, I also think, Derek, in the run game, that group is going to keep any kind of heat off the linebackers to allow them to make plays. So I think the D line's improved in a massive way.
I agree. And when you say that, if the front seven period lives up to what we expect it to, you realize how much pressure that takes off the back end of that defense. Mm-hmm. If you have an attacking defense that is constantly in a quarterback's face, constantly throwing off his timing rhythm, his his drop steps to go back to pass, that takes so much pressure because that's fewer seconds a corner or a safety has to cover a receiver or a tight end coming out in the passing game. So that's huge. If Jonathan Gannon is able to mix and match and to find the strong points against an opposition's weak point in terms of playing games and getting consistent pressure. You look at a defense like the 49ers, the Rams, Baltimore when they're healthy, Tampa Bay. You look at how disruptive those defenses are in terms of forcing an offense to do things they want to do a lot quicker or changing things up a lot more than they want to. Those are game-changing moves by defenses. And that's why those defenses have been so good year in and year out over the past few years. Their ability to dictate the action more, though, than to play sit back and play read and react football. And that's what you have to do in today's game. The game is geared so much towards the quarterback and the passing game now. You've got to find a way to counter that. And the smarter teams in the league have found a way to counter that by finding players that can be interchangeable parts, moved around, and attack more to force the issue.
Yeah, it's a great point. All right, so that leads me to something else that I wanted to hit with you today, and I want to throw this out there to all the folks in the comment section. Feel free to jump in. So, I think for the most part, Eagles fans go in very optimistic about this season for the most part, and you can tell me if you agree or not, if you're on the same page or not in a second. But my question is, if you feel that level of confidence, that you feel like they're a much improved team, what's the reasoning? Is it you believe in Jalen Hurts? You believe in Nick Sirianni? You believe in Jonathan Gannon? You think they've upgraded talent that much? The schedule's that weak again, like it was last year, which helped them get to 9 wins with a team that, arguably wasn't great. What's the reason for your confidence? I'll start with that with you, Derek. Like, where are you from a confidence standpoint in this team?
I'm very optimistic about the possibilities of what this team could do based on the upgrades they've made at various spots. And when you look at the strength or lack thereof strength of their schedule coming up. But Rob, as we know, the game's not played on paper. What we think we see isn't always what is. I understand fans' optimism about the upcoming season, and rightfully so. When you look at the way the schedule is played out, especially starting with a team like Detroit to get off to a good start and going from there. But there's reservations. We don't know. We don't know what Jonathan Gannon is or is not going to do with his defensive personnel. We've given him the benefit of the doubt that he didn't have the bodies to do what he wanted to do defensively last year. We don't know what Jalen Reagor is going to be. You see all these people, Jalen Reagor is going to ball out. Where it sounds good, but we really don't know. And when you think about all the people that we've had on in recent weeks talking about Jalen Reagor, the reviews have been mixed. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of people giving, the so-called experts giving Jalen a ring of endorsement. They all say, you know what? He has the potential to do this and potential to do that. But until we see it, we can't really say, okay, he's the quarterback who's going to carry this team, not just in 2022, but beyond. So I go in with optimism, but I pump the brakes also. I like what I see. You have to figure in how many players are going to be there to finish what they start due to injury factor. That's a huge factor. Injuries decimated a team like Baltimore last year. Baltimore was a pick to go deep into the playoffs. They were lucky to get through a season. Their quarterback was hurt for a bunch of games. They lost their top 3 running backs, lost their top cornerback. It was like, a plague going through the Baltimore camp, which cost them a lot of
specific to position groups that were just getting gutted. Yeah.
Just decimated. And so you have to take that into consideration as well. But I'll emphasize, and I'll say it again, I'm optimistic, but I'm pumping the brakes in terms of enthusiasm right now.
Okay, and we're getting some interesting comments here. Like Mr. Taz, for example, says, my biggest thing is that with this lineup, Hurts has much more support around him. Plus, his flaws from last year were coachable, fixable issues. We have much more protection on the pass rush. All good points. Dak keeps it, simple. Jalen Hurts, he's a believer. Mm-hmm. Randall, mine is a 3-parter. Schedule's weak. Jalen Hurts, trust me, he's going to show the evolution. The depth they added makes them very missing. And look, I think these are fair. Yeah, these are all fair, right?
I agree.
If I had to take one, Derek, it would be overall talent upgrade, because I find it, you don't see often in an off season where you can really, I think, elevate your receivers, really elevate your linebackers, like you just touched on very well. Upgrade your defensive line, upgrade your your corner and your safety position. All of those areas, I think they improved. And maybe you could argue the safety in a minor way. Okay, that's fair. But I think with the others in a huge way. I mean, A.J. Brown, Derek, what he does now for Devontae Smith and the rest of this offense and the quarterback and everybody else could be enormous. Having linebackers that are playmakers is enormous. Having the ability to get to the quarterback. They were the second worst in football last year at getting sacks. I always, not only is it great for your defense, but think about what it does for your offense. So 2 things. Either you create a turnover and you get the ball with a short field, or you're forcing the opposing team to punt out of their own end zone or at their own 5. And God forbid, if you have a decent punt returner, or at least a guy who can secure the ball, you're going to get the ball in really good field position.
Absolutely.
It felt like last year, didn't it feel like there was a lot of just really, and some of that was Jalen Hurts just couldn't maybe connect as well downfield, but it felt like a lot of long plodding drives for the Eagles last year on offense.
But that you know what, I have no problem with that because those long drives turned out for the most part to be productive.
Yeah.
They chewed up the clock. They went down. They got 3 or 7 out of the deal. The defense, though, couldn't make enough significant stops, and it cost them some games at critical points of the season as well. I just need to see what we're talking about, and you can't see it until September. And I'm not going to get overly optimistic in the preseason because you're going to see a lot of vanilla in the preseason.
Right. You're
going to see moments where they make you say, wow, that looks really good. And other moments are like, okay, what are they doing here? Mm-hmm. But that's every team across the board. A.J. Brown, I know people are excited about A.J. when you look at his numbers that he put up. But that was 3 years with Ryan Tannehill. And I don't consider Ryan Tannehill a great quarterback.
Yeah.
But, he was obviously A.J.'s go-to guy. Here, will A.J. Brown have the same type of success in this Nick Sirianni offense that he had with Tennessee? I mean, we don't know. We hope he does. You have a quarterback that's evolving. Jalen has a relationship with Devontae Smith. Jalen has that relationship with Dallas Goedert.
Yeah.
They're going to throw the ball to the backs out of the backfield. How many touches will, AJ get here compared to what he was getting in Tennessee? So there's so many question marks, so much speculation about how this is all going to come together in Philadelphia. The possibilities are endless, but again, because of the big question marks surrounding the quarterback, you have to sit back and wait and watch it. And that's why I say you have to reserve your enthusiasm and optimism because you don't know, man. We just don't know. And I don't want to see people set them up for a big letdown. I hope they win a division. I hope they shock the world and go deep into the playoffs. But we can't sit here and bet money saying we know this for a fact because we don't.
No, I think there's a bit like I would fall into optimism category rather than confidence. Like I'm definitely optimistic, and I think they did significantly upgrade talent on this team.
Right.
So, but I'm sorry, unless I go into the season knowing the quarterback is the guy, which I'm not sure yet. I'm not saying he isn't. I can't use the C word. I got to go with the O word to start in terms of optimism. That's where I'm at with this. But what's interesting when we do this, and this even applies to all the folks, and we see all you guys. We see Randall, we see Chris, we see Marina, we see Mr. Taz, all you guys. Dank. What the answer we rarely ever get is because I'm a believer in Sirianni.
Right.
And I don't even think that's a knock. I think he sort of falls into the same category as Jalen Hurts, Derek, where we're all kind of like, he did some nice things, but I'm not totally sold yet. I think it's going to take this year to convince people with both the quarterback and the coach before they fully buy into them.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that because most of the comments you see, whether here on social media, Facebook, Twitter, it revolves around Hurts, A.J. Brown, defensive line, linebackers, Gannon.
Yes.
Gannon, gets a lot of play as well, but very few people are talking about Sirianni, and I think it's interesting because even though he's given over the play calling to Steichen, it's still his show. Mm-hmm. It's his playbook. It was his playbook and his offensive mindset that led the Eagles to hire him as their coach to lead this team into the future. But very few people are talking about the head coach. Not that he gets a bypass because a lot of this falls in his lap. Yeah. How this thing moves falls in his lap. Your general manager, Howie Roseman, is giving you pieces. He's giving you offensive line. You have the tight end, although they do need to secure another tight end, another backup as well. You now have the weapons of wide receiver. You got a nice young stable of backs. So you have the depth now to do a lot of things. So, as much as we talk about the players, it falls on two elements more so than anything else: your head coach and your defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and Philadelphia's an interesting town, Derek, because and this goes. I mean, it goes back to when I was a kid. It was Marion Campbell for Dick Vermeil, but it's carried over like all these years. Like and I don't know if other towns are this way, but we are really focused on the defensive coordinator, perhaps in some cases more than even the head coach. Like, I think more people are focused on Gannon than Sirianni right now, which is crazy to me. I mean, the guy's the head coach. I get it. I get the frustration with Gannon last year, but I truly believe a lot of that was a byproduct of the fact that he didn't have a lot of tools.
Yes.
Like,
and I look at Randall the Handle. He says, I don't like Gannon. He has to go. And that's been a sentiment for a lot of people out there approaching this season. But I'll say this. I didn't like what I saw from Gannon in 2021 for the most part. But again, because he was at a deficit. I want to see, I'm excited and intrigued to see what Gannon does with a better stock now, stockpile of players from cornerback to safety to linebackers to the trenches. I want to see what Gannon can do this year. I'm not on the boat yet with Gannon has to go right now. I think Gannon deserves a second chance in terms of showing you what he's capable of doing with a full complement of better players. And on paper, that's what he has now, a full complement of better players at each position, at each level of positions, from the safety, cornerback, linebacker, and D-line.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing I want to see, and I don't mean just reckless send everybody and whatever every single time, but I do want to see more aggression. I do want to see in certain situations, not only just the obvious where it's 3rd and long, but in other situations where there's whether it's a run blitz or a pass or whatever, I want to see more aggressive, coaching, simply because they have better players. Like, you should have guys who are capable of making plays. You spend a lot of money on that side of the ball. So let's see it, from Jonathan Gannon. I don't want to hear any more excuses. That's the biggest thing for me, is that's how they can, to me, impact the offense on the defensive side of the ball so much greater than they did last year. And I think the offense was in a tough spot a lot of times because flat out the defense was just like, they weren't bad. If you look at the end of the day, Derek, the points per game is really the ultimate measuring stick. It's okay.
It was 22 points, I believe, a game.
Yeah, you'd like it to be.
Which is fine. 22 is a great number if you keep opponents at 22 points a game.
But we know that you could be a lot better than that. That's for sure. You can help your offense out a lot more than that. All right, so we'll come back. We'll continue to dig into the Eagles, and you want to keep throwing out there your reasons for your optimism. And look, if you're not optimistic, let us know as well. We will we'll read all the good comments as well. But we'll come back. One of the things we didn't get into with Paul Hudrick that you and I could talk about a little bit here, Derek, is in the open talk segment. Apparently, Kyrie Irving and the Nets are at an impasse, and he might be leaving there. So the big three will have been broken up in like a year and a half. Unbelievable in Brooklyn. So we'll dive into that, a bunch of other stuff when we get back as well. Don't go anywhere. Derek Gunn, Rob Ellis, Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network.